The studio lights burned hot above the stage, casting a golden glow across the polished desk where Johnny Carson sat, smiling in that calm, effortless way that made millions feel like they were part of something special. It was supposed to be just another night, another smooth, controlled conversation between Hollywood legends. But what unfolded that evening was anything but ordinary. Steve McQueen walked out first, carrying that unmistakable aura, the king of cool. He didn't try to impress anyone, and that's exactly why everyone was drawn to him. His steps were slow, confident, almost calculated, like he owned every inch of the floor he touched. The audience erupted, but McQueen barely reacted, offering only a slight nod as he took his seat. There was something in his eyes that night, something restless. A few minutes later, Clint Eastwood joined them. Tall, composed, and radiating quiet dominance, he was everything McQueen wasn't, controlled where Steve was raw, silent where Steve was unpredictable. The tension didn't explode instantly, but it was there, lingering beneath the surface like a storm waiting for the perfect moment. At first, the conversation was harmless. Johnny Carson, doing what he did best, kept things light, jokes about films, casual banter about Hollywood, a few laughs from the crowd. But then, something shifted. A comment, small, almost forgettable, sparked a reaction. McQueen leaned forward, his tone sharpening. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to change the air in the room. Eastwood didn't back down. He responded calmly, but there was an edge to his words. The kind of edge that only two alpha personalities can recognize in each other. What started as playful back and forth turned into something far more intense. McQueen interrupted more than once, his voice rising slightly, his patience fading. Carson tried to steer things back, throwing in humor, but it was slipping out of his control. Then came the moment everyone would later talk about. McQueen shifted in his chair, turned his full attention toward Eastwood, and said something that hit a nerve. The audience went quiet. Eastwood's expression didn't change much, but his eyes did. He leaned in just enough, delivering a response that wasn't loud, but carried weight. Real weight. The tension snapped. McQueen stood up, not dramatically, not like a performance, but with purpose. The crowd gasped, unsure if this was part of the show or something real. Eastwood didn't rise immediately. He stayed seated, watching, measuring. That silence was louder than anything either of them had said. For a second, it looked like things could go too far. Carson quickly stepped in, standing up himself, placing a hand out as if to physically stop whatever might happen next. The band awkwardly played a few notes, trying to break the tension. Someone off camera moved closer. The illusion of late-night comfort was completely gone. Then, just as quickly as it escalated, McQueen let out a short breath, almost like he caught himself. He shook his head, half-smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. More like acknowledgement. Eastwood finally stood, straightening his jacket, never losing composure. The moment hung there, unresolved, heavy. Carson forced a laugh, the audience followed nervously, and the show moved on, but nothing felt the same. Because what people witnessed that night wasn't scripted. It wasn't polished. It was two legends, two giants of their era, colliding in real time. No edits. No retakes. Just raw, unfiltered energy. And long after the cameras stopped rolling, people kept asking the same question: what really happened between Steve McQueen and Clint Eastwood that night? The studio lights burned hot above the stage of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, casting a golden glow across the desk where Johnny Carson sat, completely unaware that this episode would feel different from the rest. It was supposed to be another smooth night, Hollywood icons, light jokes, a few laughs, and a relaxed conversation. But from the very beginning, something in the air felt off. Steve McQueen walked out first. Calm, confident, carrying that natural intensity that made him impossible to ignore. He didn't try to entertain the crowd, he never needed to. A small nod, a quiet presence, and he took his seat like a man who didn't care what anyone thought. But behind that cool exterior, there was a flicker of something else, something unsettled. Then came Clint Eastwood. Tall, composed, controlled. Where McQueen was restless, Eastwood was steady. Where McQueen showed emotion, Eastwood hid it. The contrast between them was instant, almost cinematic. Two different energies sharing the same space and neither one willing to step back. At first, everything followed the usual rhythm. Carson smiled, threw in a joke, the audience laughed. They talked about films, about fame, about the pressures of Hollywood. But it didn't take long before the conversation started to shift. McQueen began interrupting more, leaning forward, his tone changing ever so slightly. It wasn't loud, but it was enough, Eastwood noticed. He responded calmly, but there was a subtle sharpness in his words. Not aggressive, not obvious, but clear enough for anyone paying attention. It was no longer just a friendly exchange. It had turned into something else. Something personal. Carson tried to keep things light, tossing in humor, redirecting the conversation, but it wasn't working. The tension kept building, line by line, look by look. The audience could feel it. The energy in the room had completely changed. Then came the moment. McQueen turned fully toward Eastwood, his voice low but direct, and said something that made the entire studio go silent. You couldn't hear a single movement. Eastwood didn't react immediately. He just stared back, his expression calm, but his eyes locked in. And then he answered. Short. Controlled. But it hit. That's when everything shifted. McQueen stood up. Not fast. Not for drama. Just stood up. The audience gasped, unsure if this was real or part of the show. Eastwood stayed seated for a second longer, watching him, measuring every move. The tension between them wasn't just visible, it was heavy. Real. Carson immediately stepped in, standing up, trying to diffuse whatever was about to happen. The band awkwardly played in the background, trying to fill the silence. Off camera, people started moving closer. For a moment, it looked like it could go too far. Then McQueen exhaled. A short breath. He shook his head slightly, like he was pulling himself back. A half-smile appeared, but it wasn't friendly. More like a silent acknowledgement of the moment. Eastwood finally stood, adjusting his jacket, completely composed as always. No anger. No panic. Just control. Carson forced the show forward. The audience laughed again, but this time, it wasn't the same. Everyone knew something real had just happened. Because that night wasn't scripted. It wasn't planned. It was two of Hollywood's biggest icons, face to face, letting something real slip through the cracks of a perfectly controlled show. And even now, people still wonder how close it really came to turning into something much bigger.